it's, at the end of the day, my job is a lot about working with people, and the importance of, maintaining relationships, and a good network of professionals and people to interact with is I think very, very important.
Today, instead of the introduction, I wanted to connect with you guys on a personal level. We have already finished 5 episodes and we are currently on to our sixth. I wanted to take this moment to thank each one of you for your support. Please let me know if you have any feedback and if you're looking forward to any particular career discussions in the future. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, don't forget to do that right now. And on that note, I would like to introduce our guest for today. Accounting Advisory is the career up for discussion on today's podcast. Our guest today provides advice to large multinational corporations and banks on a host of financial reporting issues. He has more than 15 years of experience working on topics associated with complex transactions, including mergers and acquisitions and joint ventures. He's originally from India, where he completed his education prior to moving to Hong Kong. He's currently a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it is my pleasure to introduce Anuj Puri on today's podcast and discuss with him the journey of his job. You are listening to The Career Show, a podcast that helps you find the right career and inspires you to follow your passion. My name is Trishan Kansrajani, and I'm a student seeking answers to career-based questions that we all have. I'm here to sit down with career specialists and talk to them about the lessons learned during the journey of their career. Welcome to the show, Anuj. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much, Tishang, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, one common theme of the podcast has been that our guests have told us that they never know what kind of career path they wanted to be at when they were just starting off their career. And I wanted to ask you, when you graduated from college, you got a certification in Chartered Accountancy. What did you expect out of career at that point of time?
The honest answer is I had no idea. I had no idea what I was getting into. I was just fresh out of college. I thought Chartered Accountancy was a fairly good, well-respected, career choice. So that's how I got into it. I had no idea about what I was getting into. I just knew that it's something that would sort of in the long run give me a reasonably good career and a sense of security. That's all basically. That's all the information I had. And the funny thing is, the other thing, one of the reasons I got into it was because it was pretty easy to get into. At least back in the day, all I had to do was fill out a form. So it was easy to get into, very difficult to get out of. That's the bit I didn't know.
Well, I know how hard it can be to get a chartered accountancy qualification, and we'll get to that in a second. But right off college, you joined internal audit, which is one career option of chartered accountancy. Do you want to briefly talk about internal audit? Because I know that's not what you currently do, but just to understand that it is a possibility of an accounting professional.
Yeah, so I did actually, it was not my first role after I finished my chartered accountancy. I did continue to work for PwC because PwC is where I did my articleship and my training. So I worked there for a bit, and then pretty much at the start of basically my career, I thought, well, why not try something a little different? And I got a role with internal audit at ITC, which is again a very well respected organization. So it was again just an opportunity to try something different. Now, internal audit as a function, I think is you're right. It's something that a lot of chartered accountants would possibly get into. It is something fairly, I'd say, intense. And it's something that is very good in the early stages of your career because it gives you really good exposure into an organization and the inner workings of the organization. It just didn't excite me as much. probably because I think I knew it. I was not born to be an auditor. That was not something that I would say I really enjoyed. It was more, I enjoyed the more intellectual aspects of accounting and reporting, and basically um, doing something that's routine and very process oriented wasn't something that excited me a lot at the time. So that's why I decided to give up internal audit and get back to the world of the lovely world of consulting in PwC.
That's great. That's great. So you did not do internal audit, but you did get into accounting advisory. How did you find that niche of yours? Because I know you have spent majority of your career in accounting advisory. And for someone to be in a same role for so long is hard. But the fact that you really enjoy it is the most interesting aspect of you. So how did you find that niche of yours?
I suppose to a degree it was just very natural. I was doing something very similar when I was at PwC. I realized, as I said, that the technical accounting aspects of my job was something that I found interesting and stimulating, and it just gave me a good, gave me a sense of satisfaction being able to look at some complex problems and solve them. So that's how I sort of got into it. In the beginning it was more for the intellectual technical side of things, but then as I worked more and more I realized that these rules can be pretty complex and be pretty hard, and um, you know there is more value that you can bring to an organization by helping them understand what the rules are, helping them apply them, helping them really um, get the best outcome, if you will. Um,
Mhm.
so that's how I think it sort of evolved, and over the years I realized bringing this to clients and bridging the gap between what the business wants to do and reflect versus what the accounting rules say is basically where I found my niche. And I think for the last 7 8 years that's basically mostly what I've been doing. And of course what's kept things very interesting and exciting is the fact that accounting rules have been constantly evolving and changing, so that's kept things very very interesting for me.
Mhm. So let's change gears and talk about new graduates. And the reason I want to bring this up because a few days ago when we were discussing about the podcast, you were asking me questions about how you can make new graduates enjoy their journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you, what do you expect out of new graduates? What is it that you are looking for when you're hiring a new graduate in accounting advisory?
I'd say the number one thing I personally look for is the attitude. I think it's the intellectual curiosity and the hunger to learn. That to me, I think is paramount. I think the second thing would be the ability to work in a team, to be able to step outside of your comfort zone and be agile. I'm absolutely not looking for the technical skills because that's not something I would anyway expect a new recruit, a new associate to have. That's something that we will obviously, ensure a person learns on the job. So really, it's just bringing that passion and that intellectual curiosity and that hunger to learn and do well. I think that's really all that I would look for.
Interesting that you mentioned only about soft skills
Mhm.
because certification is a really important aspect of accounting. You got your chartered accountancy in India. I'm sure Hong Kong has its own certification in accounting and US has its own. And these certifications are really, really important for an accountant to get into the world of accounting
Mhm.
because the industry is heavily regulated. And you said earlier that it was really hard for you to get out of it because the examination process is super hard. Students my age are losing interest in the current testing methods. So the
Mhm.
long procedure of receiving a qualification is not that interesting to students. What is your advice to these students? How should they get through this examination process so that they can enjoy this amazing, lucrative world of accounting that you just spoke about?
Um, it's a good question. I mean, I can see how, writing exams, or perhaps the current format in which, you know, students are tested is losing its appeal. I wouldn't say that. I mean, obviously, I think it's up for debate whether that system works or it doesn't work. In India, the system was, at least at the time that I was, going through it, it was definitely a fairly harsh process. The percentage of students that clear the exam has always been very low, and again, there's multiple reasons for that. But I'd say, I mean, it's sort of it's like the baseline requirement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a regulated profession.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, it's hard to uh, do away with the current system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a better answer. I don't know. It's not something that I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about. But it's sort of just the baseline. I mean, going back to what I said earlier, the technical uh, requirements or the know-how is just sort of the foundation. In order to do well, it's much more than what you need is much more than the technical skills. You need much more than the ability to read accounting literature and interpret it. You need to be able to work with people. You need to be able to work in a multicultural environment. You need to be able to understand client issues. You need to be a problem solver. So those things I'd say are, equally, if not more important. Um, I think it's the the advice I would give is, if you're looking to build a career with a big four in accounting, it's just one of those necessary evils, right? You just
Mm-hmm.
have to get through that process,
Mm-hmm.
because the profession requires baseline accreditation
Mm-hmm.
in order for you to come in and then say prove your mettle.
Mm-hmm.
I hope the system changes, and I hope the system can evolve over time to something that students, especially young students, find more engaging and more exciting. I hope that happens. But until the time that happens, and it's not, I think, just the accounting profession. There's a number of other professions out there. Lawyers, very similar. Actuarial services, very similar. So there's a number of professions out there. You just need that accreditation to get in.
Mm-hmm.
But after you've got in, there's lots of other things to do and explore, and then really sort of, bring to the table all of your other skills and capabilities to grow and do well in that role.
Mm-hmm. You just mentioned that students want to enter the world of the big four accounting firms. But it is important to note that there are a certain number of positions available at these
Mm-hmm.
big four companies, but the number of students applying to these companies is in thousands and hundred thousands,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense that everyone is not going to get an opportunity to join the big four,
Mm-hmm.
even though they are qualified, because the competition is cutthroat. What advice can you give someone who is not able to join the big four? Is it okay to start your career with a mid-sized firm if possible?
Absolutely, 100%. I think the fact that you don't make it to a big four initially means very little. At the start of your career, yes, that is one path you can choose. That's one path you can go for. But if you don't get that path, uh, I think it really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't mean a whole lot. There's hundreds of examples, if not thousands, of people that start with mid-sized firm or even small firms, and then go on to join a big four later on, because the opportunities come by at at different levels and at different times. And I think the second thing is also the foundation that you build. Working for a small firm or a mid-sized firm, you get, sometimes you get more exposure, you get varied exposure, you get the opportunity to learn more, because with the Big Four comes a lot of structure. It's, it has its advantages. You work with the blue chip companies, you work with the topmost professionals. There's a lot of resources at your disposal for training and learning. So you get a lot of that. Those are all absolutely distinct, brilliant advantages of working for a Big Four, aside from the reputation and the big name. But I don't think that's sort of the be all end all. You could always start with a mid-sized firm or even a small firm and still be able to have a hugely successful career within a Big Four. And there's loads of examples of those.
So you just mentioned the advantages and disadvantages of either joining the Big Four or starting off with a startup. And that reminds me of a top debate which my generation currently faces. And that is either joining a Big Four for their name and reputation and for resume building. But at the same time, the debate is that joining a mid-sized or a startup firm will give them more autonomy and will give them more responsibility at an earlier stage in their career. And the fact that we have both these options available, what should our method of thinking be that will lead to a better decision for a personal human being?
I think it's a good question. I don't think there's really just one right answer. I think, as I said before, both paths offer different benefits. I think what I would look for is perhaps if I was a young student starting out, possibly would be the opportunity to learn, and sort of what sort of exposure does the small, medium-sized startup outfit give me versus what does a Big Four or a large reputed firm offer. And I'd say, I think you should try and base your decision based on your interests, the job content, and the team, rather than just narrowly looking at the name, right? And again, as I said, it's relatively easier, or say even easier these days, to change tracks. So you could start by working for a small outfit and then change to a Big Four. Equally, there are loads of examples of people leaving Big Four or larger organizations and then changing tracks and either starting their own thing or going and joining a small team and working for a startup. So I don't think it's necessarily a very binary decision. It's it can work out both ways. So short answer is look at the job content, the team, and the opportunity to learn and grow, and possibly what that role offers or what that organization offers beyond just the name.
Interesting. And something that I really want to ask you is, how does an ideal day of an accounting professional look like? So if someone joins your team as new graduate, what would he be doing the majority of the day?
Well, I think for the majority of the day, he or she would be probably doing some research on a particular topic, either digging up some material from the internet or looking through our library of resources and finding some of the relevant literature. He or she could be possibly involved in developing a presentation, perhaps getting involved in meetings, taking notes, and probably spend, I'd say, ideally about at least an hour or so talking to somebody who's more experienced, understanding a bit more about the content of what they've done during the day or the tasks that they've been assigned. Why were they doing those? The way they went about doing those, were they okay? Was it something that was missing? So that's where you sort of bring it all together, and that's, I'd say, the number one thing I look for is somebody who's got the passion and has the hunger to learn. They will not just follow instructions. They would take the initiative to ask some really good questions, and try to sort of just understand their job content better, because I think that's what differentiates a good um, young associate from
I'm a
a
great
great
candidate.
and a fabulous young associate, is that attitude and that willingness to really learn and understand their job content, and then be able to then do it better. Because no matter what, I may have a few more years of experience, that does not mean I have all the answers. I'd always look to young associates, and I still do every day, encourage them to bring ideas or bring fresh insights, or just remind me of something that I may have missed. So I think that's what the ideal day of a young associate to me would look like.
Something that you earlier mentioned was in regards to how the accounting industry keeps on evolving year by year. And that is something that interests you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
How does an accounting professional keep himself up to date with these new evolutions and changes in the industry? Because I'm sure that it is really important to keep yourself updated. What are a few key tips to keep yourself updated?
So we've got loads of material and resources at our disposal. Going back to my point about the advantage of being in a large organization like a Big Four. There are loads of materials and loads of resources at our disposal that help us stay updated. We get regular updates, professional updates from that come through from the firm, from the Hong Kong Institute of Public Accountants, and just loads of other material that's available on the internet. So what I do is generally just keep reading. There are all kinds of news flashes and updates, and that's basically what we use to keep ourselves current and updated. And of course, the firm provides us with the required training as well, the required in-depth training. So that's something that we take quite seriously and always get involved with. The other thing is also just talking to people within the profession, interacting with clients, talking to people internally. And that's another good way of staying current and up to date. So just interacting with the people around you and getting different points of view.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You have mentioned some great tips for new graduates. And I want to ask you my last question, and that is, what is one advice you wish you had received when you were starting your journey as an accounting professional? What is something that you really wish someone had told you?
I think the the one thing that I feel I wish somebody had told me earlier is the importance of building relationships. It's at the end of the day, my job is a lot about working with people, and the importance of maintaining relationships and a good network of professionals and people to interact with is I think very, very important. And that's something that I feel I started a little late in my career to realize. If I had sort of always known that at an even earlier time, perhaps I would have done some of the things sooner and maybe been able to get even more out of my career. So that's, I think, a piece of advice that I would give, regardless of the type of organization you choose as an accounting professional. Particularly if you're looking for a career in client service, the importance of being able to build good relationships and having a good professional network. I think that's something that, again, is a good differentiator.
I think it's super important to build relationships, like you just mentioned. And this quality one should have even when they're a student.
Absolutely.
A lot of people who have reached out to me via my podcast, and a common theme has been whether they can reach out to the guest who I interview. And I've always said to them, please go ahead and reach out to these guys because they are more than willing to help students that are passionate. And that reminds me of something that you've been mentioning throughout this podcast, and that is be passionate, be hungry for the career that you really dream to be in.
Absolutely.
And on that note, thank you so much, Anuj, for sharing the journey of your job. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing all your tips.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Trishank. And I wish you all the very best. I mean, you're doing a fabulous job, collecting all of these thoughts from different people. And I'd obviously be quite interested as well to follow your journey and look at some of the things that you do. So thanks again for having me. And I hope I've been able to contribute in my own small way.
You definitely have, and I really appreciate your kind words. Thank you so much, Anuj.
I hope you enjoyed this week's career discussion. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means a lot.